in Camden Town. I'll meet you at the underground. In Camden Town, we'll walk there as the sun goes down. In Camden Town.
Welcome to Camdeners, the official podcast for the Camden Clean Air Initiative with me, Jeffrey Young. In this podcast, we get to know and discover the lives of Camdeners, those special individuals shaping the unique and vibrant culture of the borough of Camden. Today, we're here in the studio with Rafe Offer, founder of Sofar Sounds. Welcome, Rafe.
Thank you, Jeff. It's great to be here.
Excellent. Well, I wonder if you give us a little bit of background on yourself and how you got into the music industry, if that's what you consider yourself in.
Yeah, that's actually a good way of putting it, because I was never in the music industry. I've always been just a fan. I'm not a musician. I'm just a lover of music. And growing up in Chicago, my father would play music for himself and he'd totally zone out. And I'd try to interrupt him and say something. And he would be so into his music, which was often classical or opera, that you couldn't even get through to him. And that stuck with me, that sense of music appreciation and just being in the moment. And so I spent my childhood in the States and worked there for a variety of companies. I think the one that had the biggest impact on me was Walt Disney, and eventually got a job over here in the UK. And I'll come back to why Disney was important with Sofar. Eventually got a job with a drinks company called Diageo over here.
Yeah.
And I had kind of the craziest title ever. I was the Chief Imagination Officer, which was a fancy way of saying, think of new business ideas. And while I was working at Diageo, and that was just toward the end of my time there, I was always thinking that it's great to go hear music, but like my father, I kind of appreciated being in the moment and focusing. And not long after that, I was in a bar in Soho with two friends.
Soho in London?
Yes, this all started here. Thanks for correcting me. And the band was called the Friendly Fires, and they were starting to play. And there was this moment halfway into the gig where I just felt that all was wrong. People were talking, people were texting, phones were out. The bar was open and you could hear the clanging of the beer bottles louder than the music itself. And I kind of thought, these are all okay things, but not when I'm trying to listen. And I turned to my friends whose names are Dave and Rocky and said, can you imagine someone doing this at a movie or the ballet, whipping out a phone and having a conversation? And yet here we are interrupting this form of art. So we left and just went home and brainstormed a bit and came up with an idea that was not original. People have had music in other spaces and houses for centuries, but it was new to us. And so we decided at that moment, let's put a gig on in my house, in a house, and see what it was like. And so at the time, I was a guy working in marketing and innovation in the drinks business and had a background with various companies in those things. So I knew nothing about the music business. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why Sofar worked, because I didn't care about all the rules and broke all of them and was lucky enough that other people liked what I was doing.
Great. And so today, Sofar Sounds, what's your involvement today?
Yeah, so today I am chair of the board. I am a founder in the business. So what that means is I'm co-pilot with the CEO who I brought in about 3 years ago after myself being CEO for 10 years for the next stage of growth. So I'm quite involved in kind of the big picture.
Yeah.
And also I'm an evangelist for the business and looking after the higher level things, and less so the guts and the day-to-day of the business. So it's kind of an ideal job after being in the engine room for so long.
Yeah.
And it allows me to do some other things as well.
And the home base of Sofar Sounds is Camden?
Yeah, we were born and bred.
Near the Roundhouse.
Absolutely. Born and bred in my house, which is in Belsize Park. And office has been for many years in the Roundhouse, literally in the building next door, one floor below the headquarters of the staff of the Roundhouse. I love Camden. I've been here now for 16 years.
Hey, that's a true Camdener.
Wouldn't want to be anywhere else, Jeff. It's just a great place, as you know.
Yeah. So what's the scale of Sofar Sounds today? What like how many gigs does the platform organize? I'd like to get into the guts of that. So what's the scale? Yeah.
Well, if you're in any one of 400 cities, you would be coming to one of our gigs. We're doing nearly, but not quite there, but we will be there 1,000 gigs a month. As far as I know, there's no one else on the planet doing that many events. And I think the point is that if, Jeff, you're on a holiday, you said you were just in Paris, it's highly likely there would be a couple gigs when you were there. Look us up. It's a great way to see a city. And also for a musician, let's say you're from Sydney, but you're in town in London, we might just have a place for you to play. So the platform, as you put it, is, or the community, we like to say, is a real community. We are in every one of those, depends on the month, but let's call it, 400-ish cities. There's a real team there. I was in Belfast last week, Stockholm a few weeks before, New York. There are people on the ground making this magic happen. And today we do other things to help artists along on their way around artists' services and support. But the foundation and where we started and our home base is putting on these events. And they are roughly an average of 75 people. They're intimate. They're not just where we started in people's houses, although we still do it that way. I still host. But they are also in any sort of space where I think you can have people be inspired to lean in and really listen. So the scale is global. Yeah. We're not yet on Mars or Venus or underwater.
We'll have to have a word with Elon about that one.
Yes. Or Richard Branson, who actually invested in Sofar in the early days.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So you just never know.
Yeah. Yeah. And how many musicians do you estimate have played over the years?
So they're roughly, on a non-COVID year, we have to have that asterisk now with any live events business, 30,000 a year would play. So overall, it would be well north of 100,000, well north ever. And I think we think of it as a platform for artists to get their start, and then also increasingly to help them along their way as they start to develop.
Yeah. So on that very point of actually getting the start for musicians, it's a hard industry to make it in. So yeah, how do you guys, help really? I mean, what's the process they go through to?
You're right. It's brutal to get going and also to sustain yourself, especially without a consistent paycheck or any clarity on how you can find your way from unknown to sustainable. So we give them something that I understand from my musician friends and our research is super powerful. It's fans early. Yep. Those first, call it 1,000 fans, are really hard to come by. And, if an average of 70, 75, 80 people roughly are at an event and you play 10 events, you're starting to get towards that. We can't turn a fan into a fan, but we can give you the exposure. And what we do that is rare in the music industry is, first of all, give you that chance before you necessarily have any following. We don't care if you have followers or how many you have. We just care if the music seems to be right, if it's good.
Yep.
And good is subjective.
Yep.
So it's, my ears against your ears, but we have to start somewhere. Mm-hmm. So we have a team in each of those 400 cities who listens and decides if it's right for Camden or wherever the local places. Then what happens is we invite you to come along, and you don't have to market. And that's super rare in music. You don't have to call your mom and your friends and post on Instagram and wherever else to get people, to beg people, to convince people to come to see you.
Yeah.
And those are fans who already know you.
Yeah.
We ask you to show up without doing anything but playing. And so what happens is you have all these people who don't even know, because we don't announce who's playing, which I can get to, but we don't announce who's playing. So we have these people come expecting to be in a discovery mode.
Yeah.
And so you get new fans. So if your music blows them away, which we hope it does, then by the end of the gig, you can ask them to sign up for a mailing list and go to your next concert, any concert, and sell your merch. The format, which I should have explained earlier, is 3 acts, all unannounced. They're unannounced because of what I said, to get more fans, but they're also unannounced because it's a bit of fun, and also because we don't believe in headliners. Yeah. So for example, we had Billie Eilish play her first ever concert. No one knew who she was. People obviously enjoyed her. And while we would never claim to be a part of her success, we were there for her and many others at the very beginning. And so I think the point is, you have 3 acts, you don't know who they are. You as a fan come with an open mind and see something different.
Yeah. And does any money change hands here?
Sure. Yeah. So for 5 years, it was a volunteer project.
Yeah.
I started it for fun. And just after 5 years, it got too busy to be a fun project only. So we had to do something to make money for myself, for my family, for the others who work on this, and also for the musicians. So we sell tickets. Yep. It depends on the city and the day. The tickets in Belfast might be a bit cheaper than London. The tickets in New York might be a bit more expensive than in Melbourne. Yep. It depends. But we just sell tickets. Yep. The first people we pay are always artists. Yep. They get a flat fee. They know what they're going to get for coming up and playing.
Right. Yeah. No, that's vital. That there's that money for the. But also, I mean, and again, my own experience with our little project, the Coffee Music Project. I get that point about I've been to enough gigs where, people are nattering away in the background, as you said, clanging of glasses and everything like that. And sometimes they're even playing to a very empty room and they're highly talented people. Yeah. I mean, it's tragic sometimes.
I agree.
And all those musicians really want is actually, they'll often spend more in their transport to get to a gig, to move a keyboard around and just to actually have someone listen to and appreciate their music. It's profound, really. Yeah.
Totally agree. It's what they say, more than the money is the quiet and the listening.
Yeah.
That they're there for. And one of the things, sounds like we both try to do, is give them that platform, somewhere to play. And with Sofar, since we've expanded, we can offer them, if they're the right style and the right type of music, or rather the right quality for the local team, to play around the country, maybe even around the world.
Yeah. Wow.
One guy, Josh Savage, who's from Winchester in the UK and now based in Berlin, has played in 15 countries for us. And he said that the best part of it was meeting local people who can show him around, or Lima or somewhere in Costa Rica, et cetera.
Yeah. Are there any kind of favorite moments of this whole, obviously that initial moment that you had, that complete epiphany in Soho, but over the years, from 2009 to today, any moments that stand out as just, that was a wow moment? That was, are there hundreds of experiences like that?
Yeah, there's so many. One that stands out where I just recognized that what I had started was going to soldier on and be open to everybody. So not just the musicians, but all the fans, was when we had an event in New York on a hot day in the Bowery. And because of that, we left all the doors open. And at that time, we weren't ticketing yet. We were passing a hat, which we always did. Usually my hat usually was ruined by the end of the night. And we passed the hat round at the end of the gig. But at the start of the gig, there was a latecomer who wasn't invited. It was a homeless man. And he wandered in and he smelled. He had been sleeping rough for a long time. And he came in and no one batted an eye. And he sat down and he listened with everybody else. At the end of the night, then the hat went round. And at that time, people would put in $1, $2. Well, it got to him and he reached into his grubby jeans and he pulled out $20 bill and put it in the hat.
Wow.
And the hostess of the night, Jody, kind of ran over to him and said, "Thank you so much." And he stopped her and said, "No, thank you." That was the first time in a long time I've been treated like everybody else. Wow. And I'm also a musician.
Wow.
And it's been a little tough recently, but I love the fact that you all listen. And with that, he walked off into the sunset. And it just made us all realize, we'd built a community that was welcoming to all.
And that was Bob Dylan?
I need to change the story.
Okay, so Camden's a very musical place.
Yeah.
Do you get a lot of gigs happening in and around the borough of Camden?
Oh, yeah. Dozens and dozens. And well, over the years, probably in the thousands when you add up my house. And there's this guy, Chris Roach, who had a house not far from where we're talking now off of the high street. And I think he hosted 55 times. We lost count. So Camden is probably our favorite place. It's our homeland. It's a great place for music. Obviously, the history's incredible. And we've been there for a lot of artists before they were known. We had Bastille, if you know that.
Oh, yeah.
They played in Camden in a house. We had, back in the day, George Ezra, who played around here, Wolf Alice, and many who became well-known. And then many who didn't, but that's okay. They just were talented. But Camden's great because you can go out before, you can go out after. It's just sort of, it bleeds music. And I love being headquartered here. Yeah.
And you made, obviously, Camden not only the home of Sofar Sounds, but your own home. And what is it about Camden that keeps you here?
I think the thing about Camden that's very special is the range of stuff you can do, not even in a day, in a couple of hours. You can walk around a park and feel lost in the park and amidst the flowers and the trees as if you were maybe in your homeland in Australia. And then you can party all night. You can listen to music. You can have great food and you can feel safe. There's a vibe and a bit of an edge, just enough of an edge where you don't feel like you'd be worried about your daughters walking around. And that's important too. So there's a safety, a community, and a vibrancy. And as we know, there have been changes. And I think it adapts well to those changes. And we'll probably see a lot more. I think we might have talked about the Highline project. I love that there's hopefully going to be a Highline just like in New York, going from Camden to King's Cross. So things are happening and people don't rest here. They just keep going and developing.
So with all those gigs happening, it must be an extraordinary array of hosts. Who are these people that sort of decide to take people into their homes? And are they musicians, or are they just music lovers, or an eclectic group of people? I mean, tell us about the hosts.
It's everything. In fact, one of them was my neighbor at the time, Guy Chambers, who is a wonderful musician and songwriter, and lots of other things based in Camden. So he and his wife and their kids, they hosted in their house. So you could have someone like him. We also had a lot of people in, I guess, what we call here warehouse flats, big abandoned whatever that have been taken over by creative people. And then we have business owners who want to have a new audience, have a spotlight. We do some in Camden Stables, a number of places there. So it's everything from new businesses to people who want a little attention to people who just want to have something different and kind of cool happen in their house.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have people who we don't really know them that well.
Yeah.
There was an accountant in Madrid who once hosted who turned out to be a drug dealer.
Okay.
That's an interesting story. All went well. But you just never know. And at one time, my favorite was when we hosted with the Norwegian government at the top of a ski jump in Oslo. They were looking to get some attention to it in the summer when it was for bungee jumping.
Oh, wow.
And they asked us if we would want to have a gig at the very top of the ski jump, which we said, sure, why not? We didn't realize there was a tiny little elevator that went to the platform where you could fit about 55 people. And the bands who played didn't realize where it was. They figured it was at the base of the ski jump. And they didn't tell us they were all afraid of heights. So we had to pry them with a bit of beer and whiskey, get them over their fear. And then they played, and that was glorious.
Wow.
So you never know.
Excellent. So if someone wanted to play at Sofar Sounds, how do they do it? How do they become part of your community?
Sure. So the simplest thing is just to go to our website, sofarsounds.com, SOFARSOUNDS.com, and there's prompts to apply to play. Everybody's reviewed. You'll hear back, usually within a short amount of time. Same with hosting. So if you want to host, you can apply to host, or just come to one, see what the vibe's like, and then go to the MC and say, hey, I'm into this. Can you check out my space?
Yeah.
Most of them are pretty intimate. Sometimes we do them a little larger, but most of them are fairly intimate. So you don't be shy.
Yeah.
So hosts are welcome, artists are welcome. And if anyone wants to attend and hasn't been, check it out. And hopefully it goes well. Get a hold of me if you have any questions as well. I'm just Rafe at sofarsounds.com.
Right.
RAFE.
So other than Sofar Sounds, what else what other projects are you involved in at the moment that you're excited about?
Well, thanks for asking. So Sofar is a huge part of my life. There is time now for a few other things. I mentioned earlier, I'm involved in helping get some attention for the Camden Highline Project. And that is a charity project right in the heart of Camden. And I've also started a different business, a completely different business that is focused on helping people have better conversations in real life to get over those anxieties that many of us have because of COVID, because of technology. We're focused on our phones, and we're putting together an app to help people get over that anxiety and facilitate deeper, more meaningful, better conversations, focusing on Gen Z or Z, who really struggle these days with some health concerns and about talking to each other. The bigger picture there is that having better relationships and conversations is actually the key to a longer, happier life. If anyone out there wants to read more about it, the book A Good Life, about the Harvard study of 86 years and counting, talks about why that's so important. And my new business is called This and That .chat.
This and that.
This and that .chat.
.chat.
Yes.
And another creation in the borough of Camden.
Amen.
Well, just finally, if you've obviously met a lot of musicians, some have become very successful, others have, still playing today, and others may have given up. What tips would you have for a new musician who wants to make it in the music industry, wants to get their music heard, or whatever success means? What would you give as a piece of advice to a new or a young musician?
It's a beautiful question, and there's no one answer because it's so hard, as we discussed. I'd say, off the top of my head, first off, play as much as you can, no matter whether it's one person drunk in the back or 1,000 people or whatever you can get, because you really never know who's going to be there. And you just get better and better every time. So in those early days, before maybe you're being managed or being super careful about your audience dynamics, play. Secondly, network. It's hard for some people to get out and talk to people, but take every meeting, every gig and every meeting, because the key to get from point A to point B as a new musician is the people around you. And it's hard to meet the right people. So you've got to, as this saying goes, kiss a lot of frogs to get out there. And then the obvious advice is, go with your gut. Don't give up. I mean, that's true with almost everything in life, but as much as anyone, a creative person has to really have some true grit to keep going and to get to the place which I would just call sustainability. So whatever it is you need to be sustainable in your life, and then maybe you have a job as a barista and 2 or 3 other things, but it's not about becoming famous. It's about getting to the next hurdle. Maybe it's 20,000 pounds a year, scraping by, whatever. Get there, and then it gives you the freedom to get to the next stage. And the musicians I know who've made it get to those next hurdles, and then they can reach for the stars because they have some stability.
Amazing. Rafe, thanks for joining us here today on Camdeners.
You're welcome.
And that's all this week for Camdeners. Camdeners was recorded in Serendipity Studios in Arlington Road for the Camden Clean Air Initiative.
Camden Town, in Camden Town, in Camden Town.